Hello and welcome to the Voice of Rio Grande. I'm Craig Klein, the Dean of Rio Grande Community College Programming. In just a minute, I'll be joining my guest, Mr. Kingsley Meyer, as we discuss how to deliver classes to any number of places simultaneously, both in real time or by delay. Please join us. Hi and welcome back. Again, I'm Craig Klein, the Dean of Rio Grande Community College Programming. Our topic today, how to deliver courses to different places all at the same time. I'm joined today by my guest. This is Mr. Kingsley Meyer. He is the Director of Campus Computing and Networking here at Rio Grande. And between us, we're going to figure out how to do all of this and show you some examples of how it's done. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me today.
I really appreciate it. I'm going to start by talking about synchronous versus asynchronous learning. Let's look at those words on the screen for just a moment. There we go. So, guessing that many people aren't familiar with what these words mean, I'm going to ask my guest to begin by telling us what these things mean. And we'll just start with synchronous.
I'll say in real time versus recorded.
Okay.
And in terms of distance learning, it may be difficult to have your audiences, if it's at a remote site and a home site, to be available at the exact same time. And in this case, synchronous learning would be everybody's there, you start at the same time, you end at the same time, and it's in real time.
Okay. That's good. Let's take a look. Do we have a slide that kind of condenses all of that? Well, yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay.
Asynchronous, on the other hand, would be when you need to record something and have it played back at a different time frame. It requires everybody to have the technology to be able to play it back, but the asynchronous class, the students complete their work at their own time.
Okay. So there's obviously the ease of instruction with something like that, but you would have to prepare everything in advance, wouldn't you?
Anytime you're recording something or you're live, you want to look your best. And the fact that you're not there in front of a live group of people and you're relaxed means that you do need to have your materials prepared.
Okay.
You have to know what you're going to talk about. You have to have a plan B in case something doesn't go well. And the far end doesn't have the advantage on a screen to look over your shoulder to perhaps see what's on the board, or to partake in the subtle nuances of facial expressions. Okay. It is a totally different environment once you start doing distance learning.
So it would be a safe bet that people would need to be trained or might benefit from training for how to present themselves in this kind of format, in this medium.
The worst thing you could do is to ask an instructor at any level, say, oh, we don't have enough students for your class here on the home campus, but we would like to have you broadcast this, stream it, or any number of terms, to a remote site because they're going to watch you teach it. And there's a lot of things that go into why things can fail.
Well, I'm reminded of what I think is probably the history, certainly of asynchronous learning. Didn't we used to call these correspondence classes?
Before video, asynchronous would be an envelope in the mail. I took a correspondence course or a couple from Penn State in beekeeping, and I did my pesticide certification course. Okay. And I had a workbook. I had to complete my materials, put them back in the envelope, and send them in.
Okay. We've obviously come quite a distance since that time.
Sure.
And so we've become enamored of all things video and electronic delivery. And so we take advantage of that technology now as best we can. And so we can either do that live. So we, for example, would have a faculty member in one location teaching their course, instructing their course, delivering their lecture. But we could have any number of other receiving areas or receiving stations where who knows how many additional students could all be part of that same live experience.
During the early years, when we used to use for my experience, I was in elementary school many years ago, long ago and far away, and we had a French lesson, and we gathered together in the cafeteria. There was a TV set, and WGBH in Boston had a French teacher that taught us French. She didn't know who was out there. We were watching television. And I suppose it would be the same as if Captain Green Jean or Captain Kangaroo or the Lady in Romper Room was teaching us something. But that was synchronous. At the time, you had to be there.
Okay. But it didn't really have the feel of a live experience necessarily, because there wasn't any way to provide feedback in the moment?
It wasn't two-way.
Yeah, okay.
And that didn't come until we had either hardwired sites that were connected from one end to the other. Again, it's real time, and you have to look at whether or not the cameras are focused on the instructor, whether or not there is a camera focused on the local group of students, and at the far end. And if you haven't taught in that modality, teaching, keeping your train of thought, keeping track of the expressions of your local students, and monitoring the students that are over there at the remote site is quite challenging. You do need to be practiced, trained, and conditioned to be able to deliver this well.
So who controls what you see on screen? The faculty member? The person who's doing the lecture?
We just raised the level of difficulty there. In a larger, more professional setting, you have a studio manager, you have a tech assistant that may help you bring up the slides, roll the tape, switch cameras. That's a luxury in some cases. And there was a period of time that we used internet-based video conferencing systems before Skype came in, and we were putting a remote controller in the hands of our instructors and expecting them to flip the camera between far sight and near sight, and I'd like to have it go to my document camera, I'd like to have it go to the board. And that's a lot to ask of an instructor to be able to control all those things.
Okay. So if I'm in a distant site and I'm not in the room with the instructor and I'm someplace far away I guess being defined as anything not in that room,
okay,
in the room where the instructor is lecturing, does anyone else ever get to see me other than the instructor, or does it matter?
Yes, it does matter. Without, again, being very specific, in a synchronous learning mode, there used to be satellite broadcasts, and people would turn in their big dishes to the right channels, and our station director here, Mike, that he did that for our benefit, and we would all tune in and we would have a conference or a training session. But once it became two-way and you had two audiences, then it was just particular to those two.
Okay.
Take it to the next level where you're doing synchronous, but you have a conference call and you have multiple people. And today we think of it as more of a Hollywood Squares environment where somebody is looking at all the people that are participating. Whether they can see all of the other participants is a matter of choice of the instructor and the equipment you choose.
I see. Okay. So we can do this obviously live like we're talking about now, or I suppose while we're doing it live we'd be recording it as well, saving it for an indefinite period of time.
Now we're shifting into an asynchronous mode.
Okay.
And there you have to have the ability to capture that stream, record it, store it somewhere, be able to reproduce it if necessary, or to be able to call it back up on a stream on demand.
Okay.
And we used to talk about getting a VHS tape in the envelope along with our correspondence course. And that would be the delivery where you got to see something that had a little bit better context when it was demonstrated. And that way you could have an instructor that would really be good in the classroom, and then you would have a good lecture capture, and you would do a studio quality recording, and then that institution the provider of instruction would now send it out on demand.
Okay, so what we've done is that we've created, at this point when we jump to asynchronous, we've created convenience, but we've lost interaction.
Yes.
We've lost in-the-moment live interaction.
Sometimes you can't get both.
Okay.
And there are trade-offs.
Okay.
And I guess for an institution and an educational provider, you have to decide, not only can you afford to have instructors for everybody, and if I needed to have the best instruction, I would have a tutor working with me one-on-one. Then you have one-to-many. But when we have multiple sites and we have the responsibility to try to bring our instruction to multiple locations for cost effectiveness, and in order to break the barriers of distance, then that synchronous may be more difficult when you have 3 different sites. Now you can record it, and you can provide somebody the option to have an asynchronous access to it at a later time, because things come up and not everybody can be available at the same time.
Okay. Does it simply matter, depend upon market, what people's preferences are, or does the savvy institution offer both ways to go about this? Offer the live experience, the synchronous one, and have an asynchronous option as well?
I'm going to say that you just gave me a loaded question, but the challenge is to try to meet all of the learning modalities for every person and every audience, and you can't do that. We know that there are some people, and I'll say graduate students, not necessarily in our community college programs, that are very highly motivated, and they will learn when they have time at the kitchen table or whenever, because that's when they need to move forward on their learning and stuff. We also know that some of the younger students that are coming may be less dedicated and concentrated, and that they will maybe not succeed in some of these synchronous environments where they don't have the instructor right there.
Okay.
And this is where I'd pick up my cell phone and not pay attention to what's going on, because you're not there to throw the eraser at me.
I understand. I'd like to remind you that you're watching The Voice of Rio Grande. I'm Craig Klein, the Dean of Rio Grande Community College Programming. My guest today is Kingsley Meyer, the Director of Campus Computing and Networking at Rio Grande, and we're talking about different ways of achieving course delivery, both synchronous and asynchronous.
Thank you.
So now we're obviously going to move into asynchronous, I think, at this point.
Okay. And
this would be, is there any way asynchronous could be anything but prepackaged? Pre-done, everything pre-done?
I'm going to jump on that and just say no.
Okay.
You do have to record it. Maybe you have the ability to tape it live and do a raw run of it, or you could do a heavily edited copy, in which case you can go back over, insert slides, insert other material in a non-real-time recording. And in our case, the studio where we sit today could be used to develop asynchronous programming that could be used for our branch sites and for our students learning from wherever they live.
Okay. Let's explore that a little bit. We've gotten a grant.
Yes.
To buy some equipment, and there it is. Let's take a look at this for a minute. So we have a distance learning and telemedicine grant that's designed to help rural communities use the unique capabilities of telecommunication. That would be sending a signal and back and forth, connect to each other and to the world, yes, and overcoming the effects of remoteness and low population density. So you could achieve an economy of scale if you had 3 or 4 people interested in a given class in one place, but you also had 2 or 3 remote sites, which we do. We have Meigs, we have Jackson, and we have McArthur, and between all of these, we could achieve enough people to have a viable class.
Yes. In our instance, the grant comes via the U.S. Department of Agriculture Rural Utility Service, and it is their distance learning and telemedicine grant. We're not doing telemedicine. Our focus was on the distance learning aspects of it. And the Rural Utility Service also has telecommunications and broadband initiatives as well. Their job is specifically focused on the rural areas. And our area is considered a high impact. We have transportation hurdles. We have people that are working. And for our institution, Rio Grande Community College, having the 3 sites that need to be served, our academic centers, provided our campus a challenge. It really is something that we have proposed to serve with both synchronous and asynchronous solutions.
I think that's terrific. Certainly if I lived near any of the 3 centers away from campus, in Jackson, McArthur, or Meigs County, I would find all of this very attractive and exciting, probably.
It has some prerequisites,
okay.
and I'm sure the Rural Utility Service did not grant us the award if we did not have, some experience in delivering video technologies in synchronous and asynchronous modes, but also an infrastructure that could support this.
Okay.
And we feel very confident that we're going to be able to knock this out of the park.
That's terrific. Well, let's take a look at some of the equipment, which we need to do and which we will do.
Let's take a look at our first slide and see where we're moving with this.
Okay, so what do we see here?
In our case, we have a grant that was a partnership with Polycom, who is an equipment vendor that we used before with a H.323 type solution. This is the next generation. We're going to use something that is called Real Presence Clarity, and the pictures that we see show a larger screen with a camera on top and then a laptop where the broadcast version is being received. And it says also that it is Real Connect Skype for Business. On our campus, we have a product that we use for web and video conferencing called Skype for Business. What it lacked was the ability to scale up for an instructional type of mode. And so we have some other slides of equipment that we'll try to go through. Hopefully that they don't have too technical a component.
Much technical jargon. Well, let's see another one.
Okay.
Here are a group of focused people apparently having a meeting and sharing from at least 3 different.
So you have to picture what they call telepresence and conferencing, and not everything that we do with our institution is instructional based. We do have opportunities to have meetings, and getting together with our staff between the 3 sites can be accomplished like this. We're talking about something, we have a local site and a remote site, so being able to display that is something that we're hoping to accomplish.
So I'm looking at this slide here, and for example, I see the laptop on the table, and I see the large monitor that we saw, and I see the camera kind of poised in between the 2 screens on top. What's that unusual looking thing sitting on the table?
In this case, that is a microphone set that allows for noise canceling. You want to hear the person speaking, and there's probably a microphone on the camera itself. But if somebody were clicking on their keyboard during the middle of somebody's presentation, the noise would be picked up on a live mic.
Okay, so the idea is to not hear this.
Stop that.
But that noise canceling would take care of something like that.
Yes.
Okay. So we have the camera clearly is mounted in such a way in the slides that we've seen so that it's facing the people who are receiving the content. Is that the only camera that each individual station or site or center
what we
would
saw
use?
on that slide, excuse me, was a camera on the group at the table, not necessarily the woman that was at the screen. She is using a live presentation package so that the remote site can see in a window what she is annotating with her pen.
Okay, so in this slide that we're checking here, she's obviously making a presentation in the room with the other people who are sitting there with these devices on the table, and in this slide, the remote side would be the two men in the upper left-hand corner from wherever they're.
If I'm local,
Yeah.
I obviously can see her and the drawing. I can see my remote site. The remote site is looking at the rest of the group here, and they're looking at that presentation. They don't necessarily need to see the back of her head and shoulder drawing on that.
Okay.
And this will be some of the challenges that we'll face as we look towards how to use the technologies best in the modalities that support learning.
Okay. Let's take a look at a couple of other pieces of equipment. We have pictures of them.
We're going to use a media server, and what this is a piece of equipment that allows us to record those sessions for playback. And our learning management system at Rio Grande is Blackboard, and what we proposed in the grant narrative was that we're going to have classes be able to record them and then take instruction that perhaps Mike produces here in the studio, and we would place these on the real media server. In a Blackboard course, which is asynchronous, somebody could click on the link and see a lecture or a demonstration or a video capture. So the Polycom Real Media Server was designed for that.
That's terrific. Is it searchable down to specific topics within a lecture, or is it by lecture usually?
I will find that out. Be able to search through all the assets mean that you would also need to be able to index, be able to identify individual segments, and we'll discover that.
In theory, that's possible. It's
yes,
possible.
yeah. Now, you wouldn't want to go through everything on the media server and have it open for people to view without proper permissions. We spend a lot of time having faculty hired, produce materials, and you don't want to lose track of your intellectual property.
True.
So, being able to link to it and make sure the students in your class can get to it. There are some more things about this that are pretty interesting, and the equipment has the ability to conference not only all of our students here on Rio Grande's campus, our faculty and staff, but I believe we also talk about the Clarity Real Presence server. What this is it's a collaboration environment that allows us to host other people from other locations. And outside of the hardware value, what you see here is somebody that's not only working with their laptop, but they have multiple screens with multiple parties. This is going to be what the old terminology was a video bridge.
Okay.
And our grant included 10 licenses, so we could have 10 outside groups or 9 outside of our Rio Grande community.
Okay, and they would need, obviously, appropriate, in this case, Polycom equipment, or not?
Any laptop.
Any laptop
Mac,
with...
you could put it on your iPhone or your Android tablet. Skype for Business is a free app, and because we have our campus license to use Skype for Business, what we're going to do is use that.
Okay.
Every single one of our students can download the full Microsoft Office suite, and from the from the individual app stores, you can put this on your device. I could be missing a class, want to watch it synchronously, and even though you don't text and drive, if I have that lecture and my tablet running on the seat next to me, I might be able to pick up some of the class and then later click on that stored asset and play it back later.
I see. Wow.
We have
fairly amazing.
We have big shoes to fill, and the challenge is to make sure that it's installed, that it's configured properly, that we'll be able to schedule a class, send out those invitations for that video segment, that our faculty and those people that are going to be instrumental in the delivery are trained to use it properly. And it's a 3-year grant, so from the timeline that the RUS contracts are signed, we provision the equipment, we then configure it, and then we move forward with training and then delivery. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay, we won't. I certainly won't do that here in this program. We have one more slide that we do need to see, because this is something that will be visible when you go to any of the 3 centers in Jackson, McArthur,
Can't you picture
Meigs.
that up at the McArthur site or in Meigs and Jackson?
I can actually.
Looking at a computer screen the size of your monitor isn't always the best way. So we have in the grant, 4 of these units, and then we have an extra camera like that up there. We have lots of sites on campus that are capable of being studios. In fact, with a webcam, you could use any of our instructional podiums with software on the laptop. That doesn't mean that it's the best quality, but we're going to have some of these edu carts as our primary equipment. We'll have one camera. We'll choose to one of our classrooms with some drop-down mics. Choose a small enough classroom so it's an intimate setting. We don't want to look at it from the back of a lecture hall. And we'll use our consultants to make sure that we choose the best facilities.
Okay. Well, in the best of all possible worlds, how long does it take to roll something like this out so that we're actually ready to use it? Several months, several weeks, a few days?
Several months. Several months. I'm hoping that we can finish up our grant administration paperwork, place the orders for equipment, have them provisioned between now and the end of spring, and then over the summer we could start getting some of the classrooms prepared. I would want to have pilots only in the fall, not commit ourselves for major classes over the fall, but let's look at that next spring. We'll get better.
Okay.
We will get better.
And with that, I think we're going to draw things to a close here. I'd like to thank you, Kingsley Meyer, for being my guest today on The Voice of Rio Grande and talking about synchronous versus asynchronous course delivery. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us as well. I'm Dr. Craig Klein, the Dean of Rio Grande Community College Programming, and this has been The Voice of Rio Grande.